Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red, and this is my disclaimer. This beta read in concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of original fiction. We are on chapter 3. We are skipping chapter 2 at No-Ant-5039's request. That is our author. And we are on Nothing Left to Save. So they've asked us to skip chapter 2 and we're moving right on to chapter 3. I have a playlist for all of the reads that I've done for No-Ant-5039. This is my second piece that I've looked at for them, and you can find those there and follow along the story. I'm going to see how this works for me by skipping a chapter. So you're going to have the same experience I do when maybe we're missing information, but she kind of alluded to it being I guess when I had done a first draft read of the first chapter of Nothing Left to Save, and then I think I did another read of it after they'd done some adjusting. But I guess the information was from the original read was kind of split between chapter 1 and 2. So she's kind of saying that chapter 2 would seem repetitive, I guess, because of my original read. So we're going to accept that and just kind of dive in here and see what happens. If you're new here, welcome. I love a like and a subscribe, and I'd be happy to read for you. I read first chapters for free. I do them public or private reads. There are some authors who are just too shy, and that's fine with me and totally okay. So if you're interested in a read, go ahead and reach out to me and we can work that out for you. All right, chapter 3. The high swells inside her as amusing and dangerous as stumbling home after the last call and steady steps. Okay, so we have stumbling and steps. Let's talk about that for a second. So stumbling and steps, as in moving, walking, not the kind of steps you're climbing, are very similar. And it's okay, they're different. It's not a true echo, but at the same time, they do have st sounds, both of them. Very close proximity. I'm going to try to read that again. I hate that I tripped over it, but I also note that if I was reading it silently, I likely would not have tripped over it. I just would have read on right on through and not had a problem. But when I give pause or I trip, I also say to myself, okay, what caused that pause? Why did I trip over this? In this case, I think it's because they have the same sound in close proximity. So I'm just going to note that because it's nothing I'm suggesting any changes to, and we're going to try again and keep going. The high swells inside her as amusing and dangerous as stumbling home after last call. Unsteady steps, clumping on the pavement. Okay, so it's something to do not just with the stumbling and the steps, but also home after last call. I'm misreading the pause, I think. So we have a pause. Let me try it again. The high swells inside her as amusing and dangerous as stumbling home after last call. Unsteady steps, clomping on the pavement. The taste of menthol and whiskey that used to linger on her laughter. And with that familiar clarity, her mind sharpens, processing with precision. Okay, we're going to keep reading. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this at this moment. I'm just going to note it to see if it becomes anything. It probably won't because I have talked to Ant about this, and I've talked about this in other videos too. So we're just noting it to see if it pops up more than once. If it's just occurring once or twice in the whole chapter, it will not be an issue worth talking about again. And I'm not going to go on and on about it because I have talked about it in past videos, but I'm just going to note it. This is so that we can read on and that we observed it, and we're just going to keep a kind of an eye out to see if it becomes a thing. I don't think it will, but again, for the sake of not having to scroll back later, if that does become a thing, we have done our duty as we go. But best of all is that sense of confident freedom. Few things compare to the charge of being alive, the pride in how she moves her body. Kate remembers sitting up straight, the knot of her bikini top warm against her fingers. No second thoughts, just the simple surrender of letting it drop to the ground. Back when she still owned bikinis. Now, almost a decade later, she lets herself reunite with her past, a salty drip forming in the back of her throat. Her heart beats faster, and the cabin she's barely explored spins with possibilities. The light from the skinny windows is brighter, and like a spotlight in the fog, it illuminates particles, beaming them up from the floor in gold. Her mind admires the suspended dust. Oops, hang on just a second. My husband was leaving to get my son, and I didn't want a whole lot of noise in the background. Let me start here. Her heart beats faster, and the cabin she's barely explored spins with possibilities. The light from the skinny windows is brighter, and like a spotlight in the fog, it illuminates particles, beaming them up from the floor in gold. Her mind admires the suspended dust, something so ordinary now magnified with meaning. It feels like a revelation, a fleeting constellation caught in the amber of the moment. The walls cave in against her peripheral vision, both enclosing and expanding her thoughts. Kate looks up to see John is watching her. His grin from earlier is still there, but it's softer now. There's a slackness in his jaw. Breaking the silence, he clears his throat. Feels like it's working, he says. The corners of Kate's mouth turn into something that isn't quite a smile. Working how? You tell me, he says, but he's already moving, glass in hand. An unspoken energy unravels. Whatever game he was playing is gone now, replaced by something lighter and uninhibited. And as the dust dances in the sunlight, she wonders if for the first time in a long time they might finally be on the same wavelength, or at least the space between them doesn't feel so insurmountable. Let me try that again. And as the dust dances in the sunlight, she wonders if, for the first time in a long time, they might finally be on the same wavelength, or, at the very least, the space between them doesn't feel so insurmountable. Kate had been tiptoeing around John's mood for a week. They're just coming off a full moon. These bouts used to be brief, a few days, every few weeks. Not anymore. For the last year, maybe 5, it's like the distance has become permanent. No pattern, no predictability, just a continuum of disconnect, a slew of expectations, her own, his, their interpretation of each. And through all that noise, she hears unspoken criticism. Week to week, night to night. Pausing. Okay. And she's caught in it, caught in the pull of his stubbornness, in the way his silence feels like an accusation. Lonely, as if his depression is another party in their marriage. He has a place for it at the kitchen table and in their bed. It wedges out a place between them and the pillows. Some nights it's a wall, and some nights it holds her stare, boring into his back, hoping he'll turn over, but knowing that he won't. She can't even pinpoint when the dynamic shifted, evolving from something she could empathize and forgive to something she simply couldn't. Kate tries, though. In a manic frenzy, she rearranges and she cleans. The effort to please him feels more like a chain than a choice. Something happens to her psyche. She can't help but feel like the days of dissonance outnumber the days when he calls her baby. Kate flounders. She folds. She'll make chicken tortilla soup or scrub the microwave, these small, desperate rituals as though they could pull him back to her. Hey, John says, his voice quieter now. She turns to find him standing by the corner, touching up his drink. That dress, he pauses. You look good in it. Okay, so it's still him speaking. You wrote his pause, but he's still speaking, so I'm inclined to suggest you move it up here. Now, I thought I was on editing, and I'm not, so now I'm editing your document. I don't want to do that, so we're not without it tracking it, so let me just go up here and move myself to suggesting, and now make the suggestion. There we go. It's a simple thing, the way he says it. She knows he means it. She brushes her fingers over the fabric, suddenly hyper-aware of its texture, the way it clings to her frame. Thanks, she says. John sets his glass down and steps closer. I mean it, baby. What? This old thing? She teases, her voice light, but her body already shifting, turning towards him with a slow, deliberate grace. It was on sale, she adds, a knee-jerk defensiveness. She moves her head upward to meet his gaze, lips brushing his with a hunger that doesn't quite belong in a kitchen, her mouth open, pulling him in. Her hands find the back of his neck, fingers curling, pressing. He lifts her, her legs locking around his waist, and she's held there. The kiss is urgent, desperate, something deeper than the moment. With wild vigor, the passion of their kiss is as loud as the full, unexpected bloom of the Christmas cactus, a burst of color against a season of darkness, and it blooms for them in mid-October. Lips still pressed together, Kate's jaw tightens and the air outside calls to her, pulling her out of the kitchen as if the kiss had unlocked something deeper and restless. She remembers the sensation, the sensitivity on her skin and uneasiness in her calves, a need for movement. The heat of his body against hers becomes too much, too close, the beams of the ceiling too low. She needs to escape, to break free of whatever this is before it consumes them entirely. John's hands pull her closer. Okay, I kind of would suggest here John pulls her closer because the hands pulling feel distant to me. John pulls her closer, but Kate can't breathe like this, not in the way she needs to. All right, so we've got repetition on breathe, but I think it was intentional, so I'm not inclined to say too much about it. I noticed it, I observed it. I'm not even going to make a visible note on the document about it. I'm going to read this 2 ways so she can hear it both ways and she can decide which one she wants. What I will do is put musings in video because I'm doing multiple things to this one line, or I've made multiple comments about the same line. So I'm just going to note it so she can find the place quickly. All right, let's try it both ways. Why am I hearing noises upstairs in my house, but I'm the only one here? Okay, we're going to blame the cat because the bunny's locked up today. she's in her house. She was out earlier and got into trouble. Okay, let's try this line. John's hands pull her closer, but Kate can't breathe like this, not in the way she needs to breathe. Okay, so that's one way we can read it. And now we're going to try it another way. John pulls her closer, but Kate can't breathe like this, not in the way she needs to. Now, I left off the second breathe, and I made it more active by removing the distance of having his hands pull her closer. John's hands are part of his body, so we're not describing a texture or a sensation akin to his grip. The sound just happened again. I'm the only one here. Oh, that was another sound. Like there's action. Okay, guys, I'm going to pause for just a second to go check out what is happening in my house. Okay, it was my cat. I think that he jumped in a laundry basket in the hallway and then jumped out of it, and the basket flopped everywhere and made a whole bunch of noise. Okay, I'm blaming the cat. All the doors upstairs were closed because the bunny was out earlier. And when I came over to the steps to see what was going on up there, he came strolling by. So he made some noise when he was teleporting. I don't know. We're going to go with it. I do believe he teleports, though. He pops up everywhere. Okay. So we talked about this line. We're going to move off of it, and we're going to move on. I need air, she says, though the words are a murmur, lost in the space between their lips. She feels the heat of his breath on her skin as he pulls back just a fraction, eyes searching. Without waiting for a response, Kate takes his hand and leads him towards the door, her pulse still pounding in her ears, the flush of desire still burning in her cheeks. Okay. I feel like you could omit the still here and just go with burning in her cheeks. And I'm glad that I made the recommendation to omit hands up here because you can keep it here and it works. And it would also have been an echo and eliminated. All right. Hang on, let me grab my drink, he says. Do you want yours? She nods. The door slides open with a muffled squeak. The cool afternoon air rushing in to meet them. They spill out onto the patio amongst abalone shells, succulents, and mosaic pieces sealed into the stone pavers. The ground beneath her bare feet is solid, grounding her as she steps further into the open space, her toes curling on the cold. Kate pulls away from John just enough to swig from her glass. The vodka burn is muted by the salt of her drug drip. Okay. Kate pulls away from John just enough to take a swig from her glass. I guess because she's drinking the vodka next, I almost felt like this could have been a second sentence on its own, but it makes sense to have the afterthought of her drink. So I'm going to read it again. Kate pulls away from John just enough to swig from her glass. The vodka burn is muted by the salt of her drug drip. Yeah, so I think because it just sounds like it could be its own sentence. I don't know. I think if I was reading it silently, I wouldn't have noticed that, so we're going to keep going. She laughs. I forgot some of the nuances of this stuff. John watches her, his gaze sharp, but there's something in it now, an unspoken understanding. She turns slowly, letting the breeze rush through her hair, feeling the moisture from the distant waves land like dew on her cheeks. Kate feels the sensation of something larger, something beyond the warmth of the house and the weight of their kiss. She takes one more small sip, trying to restore her mind to the clarity of that first line. but it only makes her dizzy, like spinning on a forgotten axis. John steps closer. His hand finds her waist, pulling her toward him again, the unexpected intensity between them returning with a smack. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second because I'm having a couple of different thoughts as we roll through here. John steps closer. His hand finds her waist, pulling her toward him again. So again, we have a description of where his hands go. And I get that because where those hands are placed can draw sensation. There's a way there's a way that our person can grab, like not rough grab, but like when they put their hands on you, where they grab you, how they grab you, can elicit sensation inside of you. So I kind of get why she is following his hands. But I guess John steps closer, pulling her toward him again, the unexpected intensity between them returning with a smack. And then I'm wondering, okay, so I'm kind of musing over his hand, how many times I'm kind of wondering if this is a thing that I should be highlighting throughout if we describe his hand placement numerous times throughout the chapter, because that would be a pattern which we don't want. Does that make sense? I'm just going to say musing in video, and you can decide if you want to screen through, or if we continue to read on and we notice more mentioning of hand placement, I guess I could start highlighting it. I'm just going to say musings in video for now because I'm just wondering. I noticed it, and therefore it's worth mentioning. Whether or not we do anything is completely up to you, but it kind of is something I noticed and therefore worth mentioning, because it may come into play if it becomes something that happens again and again, which can happen. And if I start noting it now, we'll be glad. Then I'll just scroll back and find it, which I would have to do if I looked prior, but I do know we've noted 2 of them already before this. John steps closer, pulling her toward him again. Now, the other thought that I'm kind of having as I get to this point is, we have description. Okay, so we're in Kate's headspace, so we are not going to know what John is thinking. So we're trying to show that, and it seems like he's trying to be romantic. So he's trying to, they're having this experience, and he's trying to they're trying to get a shared thrill and rekindle some spark. But as I got right here, I'm like, is this a play-by-play? Am I having play-by-play vibes? And I'm kind of pausing and wondering that. So we have, all right, we have them moving around. We have the back and forth of body language, like, she put a pause on things. Okay, she's like, I need air. She puts a pause on things. She goes outside. He's freshening up his drink. She's kind of having the high kind of in there too. She's having some side effects of that. Grounding her as she's stepping further into the open space, her toes curling on the cold. I'm wondering at what moment did I start to kind of feel like, and why I started getting the sensation of play-by-play. Why did that come to me? I'm questioning that. I think we have, for John's part, what he's doing. And then I'm like, we need to, because we don't know what he's thinking. We only get what he says and what he does. So am I overthinking this, or is there something to the play-by-play sensation? Let's back up just a little bit. When did I get the sensation? I kind of feel like it might be here. I think that's part of the second reason I paused. I think it might be the back and forth. Like, they were kind of making out, and then she kind of slammed on the brakes, and now they're kind of like, he's trying to make out again. So I don't know if it might be the repetition of them connecting and then her putting a little bit of distance there and then them connecting again, that maybe I just kind of felt, maybe I felt the repetition, and maybe that's what, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm questioning why I had this underlying sensation. So I've not quite gotten to the bottom of that yet. And so I'm wondering what the possibilities are as to why I started to kind of get that sensation. It kind of gave me, it makes me want to look around. Does that make sense? I want to like look around and be like, what kind of led to me having that feeling as the reader? Why did I feel that? Let me pause for a second because it's bothering me. Okay, so she gave pause and needed air. And I'm wondering, let's look back here and let's go forward again. So we'll start here and we're going to go forward. I'm kind of puzzling this out, and I have a couple different thoughts. She moves her head upward to meet his gaze, lips brushing his with a hunger that doesn't quite belong in a kitchen, her mouth open, pulling him in. Her hands find the back of his neck, fingers curling, pressing. He lifts her, her legs locking around his waist, and she's held there. The kiss is urgent, desperate, something deeper than the moment. With wild vigor, the passion of their kiss is as loud as the full, unexpected bloom of the Christmas cactus, a burst of color against a season of darkness. It blooms for them in mid-October. Okay, so first I omitted the and it read beautifully. Second, there's no actual, this is literally what, okay, you have movement, the characters moving as they make out, all right? So we have their make out. And then we have this kind of beautiful color-drenched sensation surrounding them. Oh, Lord. Okay. All right. I just got interrupted. I hate that. Okay. So we had their making out. I omitted this. It read great. We have this kind of texture with it here, this palette that kind of drenches it in color and richness and makes it feel, it gives it a sensation. But I don't have her internal thoughts, okay? And I'm not saying put a whole lot in there. I just don't know where her mind is. Now, we don't think a whole terrible lot when we're making out, just going with how it feels, but I don't even know how she feels about what's happening. And I guess when I got here and she needed air and she can't breathe, I don't know if that's because she's high and it's like a side effect sensation of, that. I have to assume that, but I kind of also thought, what is going on in her head? Maybe there's an internal thought that leads to this sensation of I need air, I need space. Does she have thoughts going through her head like, there's problems in their marriage, there's distance between them? Does this kind of run rampant in her head as she's trying to get herself in the feel to reconnect with him? Does that make sense? And so I'm kind of wondering what is going on in her mind. Is she into it? I can't really tell, but and I'm not saying her thoughts need to be long. They can be fleeting. I just have no idea what they are, so I can't even make a suggestion. And where would I tuck them? I'm not entirely sure, but I kind of feel like it's a beautiful paragraph, but I'm assuming she's into it because she's participating, okay? But then we get here, lips still pressed together, Kate's jaw tightens and the air outside calls to her, pulling her out of the kitchen as if the kiss had unlocked something deeper and restless, okay? So we have a sensation, all right? She remembers the sensation, the sensitivity on her skin, the uneasiness in her calves. So she's thinking more about the high. She's not thinking about him, a need for movement, okay? So there's that kind of itch-ache sensation inside you there that calls you to move. I think this paragraph is good. The heat of his paragraph, by the way, I'm not saying any of them are not. I'm just noting, I don't think anything needs to be changed here. I don't have any suggestions, and there's nothing giving me pause about it. The heat of his body against hers becomes too much, too close, the beams of the ceiling too low. She needs to escape, to break free of whatever this is before it consumes them entirely. So she feels like everything's closing in on her. This seems like a sensation of the high, and it's causing her to feel like she needs to leave. And I'm kind of assuming that her thoughts are in the same headspace. She's going into her experience. So she's not actually thinking about her husband in this right here. And what I'm doing is slowly rationalizing along the goal of each paragraph, still trying to get to the bottom of why did I suddenly feel a little bit of, right here. Now, it could be a whole lot simpler than all the rambling I'm doing, and it could be nothing at all, but I could not get to the bottom of why I felt the way I did. So I thought if I studied back and moved forward, I could better examine the sensation. All right, so from here, she's needing to escape. John pulls her closer, but Kate can't breathe like this, not in the way she needs to. I need air, she says, though the words are a murmur, lost in the space between their lips. She feels the heat of his breath on her skin as he pulls back just a fraction, eyes searching. Okay, so he's kind of pausing like, what's going on? Without waiting for a response, Kate takes his hand and leads him toward the door, her pulse still pounding in her ears, the flush of desire burning in her cheeks. All right, so this tells me she's into it, flush of desire burning in her cheeks. She's leading him to the door. I don't know if we need, I guess she could take his hand. That's intimate and personal. And it still says everything's okay, all right, by her action. So I may have overthought this, but really what I was trying to get to was, why am I having this why is there like a little alert going on? All I could say was back here was the only place I was thinking, what is her headspace? Through my study, everything seems fine. We're going to keep going. All right, so she's taking his hand, leading him to the door. Hang on, let me get my drink, he says. Do you want yours? She nods. The door slides open with a muffled squeak. All right, so we have her sensations. I think that's why I'm getting this. I'm still reading, okay, and I'm starting to still feel that play-by-play sensation. It's carrying on. Even though it's all beautiful, okay, I don't know what she's thinking. I don't, like some little tucked in and direct internal thoughts. I have sensations that are part of the high, but I don't know, is she enjoying this experience? Does she like it? Is she still feeling sad? What are her feelings inside? I don't really know. I mean, they're having this intimate moment. Does she still find him attractive? Is she thinking about that? See what I'm saying? Like, do you see what I'm trying to say? Okay. Let's see. Hang on, let me grab my drink, he says. Do you want yours? She nods. The door slides open with a muffled squeak, the cool afternoon air rushing in to meet them. They spill out onto the patio. Yeah, okay, so it literally kind of does, all right? Let's look at it this way. Hang on, let me get my drink, he says. Do you want yours? She nods. Okay, this is an opportunity right here to have an internal thought. What is she thinking about? Where is her headspace? I really don't know her thoughts or feelings at all. I get her sensations and parts of the high. I get them making out, but I'm trying to interpret if she's into it, because she kind of she needed a breath, but I think that was part of the high. They spill out onto the patio amongst abalone shells, succulents, and mosaic pieces sealed into the stone pavers. So beautiful visual. The ground beneath her bare feet is solid, grounding her as she steps further into the open space, her toes curling on the cold. Very nice. But what is she thinking about? What does she feel? Kate pulls away from John. Okay, so she's pulling away from him again. Why? What is in her headspace? We don't have to have thoughts in all of this, but if we have them sprinkled along the way, then I'm going to feel more grounded in her actions and knowing kind of where her thoughts and feelings are. Kate pulls away from John just enough to swig from her glass. The vodka burn is muted by the salt of her drug drip. She laughs. I forgot some of the nuances of this stuff. Okay, so is she still just focusing on the high? Is she thinking about the high? She's noticing it, but what does she think about it? Is she getting the experience she hoped for? Does it feel like she remembered? I mean, there was a remembering back here that was working really nicely. We don't have to have it constantly, but a little bit here and there would be helpful. John watches her, his gaze sharp, but there's something in it now, an unspoken understanding. So he's like, yeah, I'm feeling it too. She turns slowly, letting the breeze rush through her hair. By the way, if you're new here, I am not mentioning adverbs because Ant uses them knowingly, and so unless I see something really in my face, I'm not going to harp on them here. I am just going to say I am noticing them. I am not going to point them out at this point. She turns slowly, letting the breeze rush through her hair, feeling the moisture from the distant waves land like dew on her cheeks. Kate feels the sensation of something larger, something beyond the warmth of the house and the weight of their kiss. So I kind of get that energy in the air sensation that, you get sometimes, and you can go out by yourself even and still feel something. You just feel the energy of life in the air. She takes one more small sip, trying to restore her mind to the clarity of that first line. But it only makes her dizzy, like spinning on a forgotten axis. So we have her goal, all right? We have what she was trying to do. She wanted that initial rush again, and she didn't get it. We have her sensations. I just kind of wonder I really don't know her headspace. And maybe when you're high, you don't have anything but the sensation, kind of like when you're drunk. But I don't know, my thoughts still ramble when I'm drunk. Like, I'm drunk. No one's going to care if I do X, Y, Z, because they're just going to blame it on me being drunk. So I do still have thoughts. They are just chaotic, rambling, incomplete, and ridiculous, and definitely things I would not do sober. So I do still have thoughts, and so I think that it would be worth it to kind of tuck some up there. Let's keep going. John steps closer. His hand finds her waist, pulling her toward him again. The unexpected intensity between them returns with a smack. There's no more question in his eyes now, no hesitation, just the need to close the distance between them, to bring them back together again in the afternoon light. The air clings to something sacred. The air clings to something sacred. Where did I lose my spot? Something fragile that could dissipate in the moisture. Right. So I'm at 31 minutes. I'm going to finish this paragraph, and then I'm going to stop myself like right here. So I'm going to highlight that pink so I know where I'm at when I come back. Kate tilts her head back. Yeah, it looks like I have a long way to go over here. 17 of 40. I don't know if that's more than one chapter in here. Let's look ahead. Let me finish this stop here, and then we'll look ahead and see how much further I have to go in chapter 3. Kate tilts her head back, her cheek exposed to the sun, feeling the roar of the waves move through her. She could stay here forever, caught between the outside and the inside, between this moment and the next, the moment where John desires her. But for now, she stands still, feeling the world slip away as she clenches her teeth. She's acutely aware of the desperation that's latched on to the last few years of their marriage. Okay, so I kind of have her, we have a high sensation right here. We have a kind of a sensation about, an awareness that they're desperately trying to hold on to one another. We don't know why. We don't know what happened. Was there something that happened, or did space just kind of, did life just happen? The mundane. Was it, we kind of got impression of the routine. I felt like the distance that's between them came from what I've read so far, from just the mundane day-to-day routine, and taking care of others. The first chapter lent me that impression as well. So I kind of don't know she wants to stay here forever. So I kind of get her thoughts I kind of get her indirect thoughts through her sensations here and her feelings. And I think this is kind of one of her internal thoughts. I feel like this is an internal thought. She could stay here forever, caught between the outside and inside, between this moment and the next, kind of in a pause, kind of a little pause. It's a fleeting moment. But for now, she stands still, feeling the world slip away. She clenches her teeth. She's decided to enjoy right now, but then at the same time, she's got this little side effect. So I feel like this one's working fine. Let's pause right here. Let me scroll forward and see how much further I have to go. I'm almost done. I may just finish up. Let's go ahead and finish up. I think we'll be all right. I'm going to be cutting it close before I get interrupted by people arriving home for their day. Like a shadow creeping over the moment, her mind drifts and her heart races. The ache of nostalgia has long lost its sweetness. Memories haunt. The day John would call in sick and stay in bed with her, worshiping her body with quiet devotion. Okay, memories. Oh, there we go. These ghosts, visitations on the periphery of her thoughts, taunting her with the version of him she used to know. Maybe they taunt her, or in lieu of taunting, taunt her? Let's try it with taunt. These ghosts, visitations at the periphery of her thoughts, taunt her with the version of him she used to know, the way he used to look at her, the surprise flowers at lunch, the kiss in front of the clam chowder booth on the pier. Kate missed her husband. How he was back then, how she was. Yes, that's it. How she was when he wanted her. Love this paragraph. It's beautiful. Between the cost of groceries and the chalk left out in the rain, trying to get the kids down for a nap, and never being able to find matching socks, the dissatisfaction loomed like a constant weight. In the exhaustion of monotony, conversations unraveled, and an emptiness she couldn't shake consumed her. Yet here they were, in the middle of a weekend, celebrating their resilience, celebrating their years of Wednesday night couples therapy sessions and all the quiet weeks in between, waiting for their therapist to untangle whatever issue lingered past the hour. She longs to rekindle something they thought was lost, caught between the desire to fix things and the fear it's too late. Kate exhales a shaky breath that stirs in the air between them. But here in his arms the past fades. Now she pulls him closer, seeking the comfort of a love she's unsure she can still trust, but desperate for it all the same. His lips graze her neck, and she stands there, present with him amongst the succulents. There. I think it's there. Hang on just a second. Okay, my sister got home. She stands there, present with him amongst the succulents. Then it hits her. Right. She had already written off her latest fix-it strategy. A psychic rearrangement, Jess had called it, a joke of sorts, but the truth lingered in the humor. She'd come here in search of a solution, a way to heal the cracks, a way to bring them back to the place they once were. And for a moment, she thought it might work. Oh my gosh, I feel so much doubt here. I'm like worried. I'm worried it's not going to work, but I'm really worried it's not going to work because she's like kind of already given up and decided. So she's like going through the motions here. I'm kind of like, what's going to happen? Where is her headspace? Like, it's kind of sounding like she's already, I don't know. Okay. Reader sensations. Sorry, guys. They've had this weekend planned for 2 months. 10 years is no small feat. But when John had pulled away, withdrawn, his moods shifting like wind, she had stopped pursuing her idea. In fact, she was having second thoughts around it anyway. But fate, stubborn as always, intervened. Hang on a second. He responded to her text, and then on the phone, there was no trace of that weary depression in his voice. And well, here they were, high on cocaine, lusting for each other in a way that feels more like hunger than affection, the kind of desire that blurs the edges of everything, making them forget the years, the hurt, the children sleeping in their aunt's house. For a moment, they are what they once were, the couple who loved each other with a ferocity that felt vital. She moves with a reckless certainty, the kind that comes only in moments like this, the very kind she's been missing. Kate pulls John back through the kitchen door, her steps unsteady, her purpose clear. Without pause, she reaches beneath her dress, slips off her underwear, and presses them into his hand. There is no pretense, no hesitation, just the raw confidence of someone teetering between sloppiness and passion. She takes the plate of powder, her silence deliberate, and walks down the hall toward the bedroom, leaving John standing there, holding what's left of her restraint. Oh, like the end of that. Nice. Okay, so I am going to challenge my author. I know we love all the ands and buts and how it lends to the cadence. It's almost poetic. Tit-tat, tit-tat. But go back and reread the sentence without those words and just see if it still makes sense, because it probably will read better without it. It will not always work, but it's really simple. If it reads well without it, drop it. And if it doesn't, keep it. It's that easy. I'm going to give you an example, but by you kind of tasting how it sounds, all right? But in order to get it, when you have a sentence like this, I usually go one sentence above and then read through. The taste of menthol and whiskey used to linger on her laughter. With that familiar clarity, her mind sharpens, processing with precision. Best of all is that sense of confident freedom. Few things compare to the charge of being alive, the pride in how she moves her body. Kate remembers sitting up straight. See how it just kind of flowed right on through? So you don't actually need them, and it's going to read stronger without them, so go ahead and just drop them if that's what you choose, obviously. But that's what I do when I'm trying to decide. I read it with it, and then I read it without it, and sometimes it won't make sense without it, and then you got to keep it. I had the musings in between. I got it back. I got back immersed into their sensation. The mix kind of going on there went really nicely through the second half. Once we got past that point, for a minute, I was having that little that little, what am I starting to feel a certain way that isn't what I usually feel when I'm reading your work. And so it gave me pause, and I kind of wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I wasn't sure if it was me or if there was something I needed as a reader. Overall, I enjoyed this chapter as always. I enjoyed the color in your words. It's just absolutely, your voice is just so beautiful. So on that note, we are going to wrap up chapter 3, and I will see you guys next time for chapter 4. I'm getting distracted as people start arriving home. It's time to wrap it up. All right, guys. I'll see you next time on Mystery Red Reads.